Hi everyone. Welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for first-year schools, and the topic of this webinar is setting up your advisory council. My name is Sue Reynolds, and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So a couple of things for those of you that we've not met before. ASA, or the American Student Achievement Institute, is a nonprofit organization that was founded by Indiana school counselors. Our mission is to raise student achievement and close achievement gaps. Pretty simple mission. Our data goals are specifically to increase the percentage of students who enter and complete post-secondary education on time. So that means we're really looking at everything that happens in grades K through 12 in order to enable students to enter post-secondary and complete post-secondary on time. And then we're also looking at increasing the percentage of students who become productive members of a global economy. So those are our goals that are related to our mission. And then our expertise is in the process of data-driven improvement, school improvement. And we apply that process to a lot of different initiatives. Our very first initiative was RSC. It's one that's very dear to our hearts. We love this work. But we also do work to help schools improve AP, IB, and dual credit enrollment and success. We've worked with whole school improvement, another initiative that helps schools come up with their school improvement plans. But the process that we use, vision to action, is the same in all of our initiatives. So, and just a little background about me so you know who you're working with. I was a public school counselor. I worked at the Department of Ed for a number of years as the school counseling consultant. I also chaired the High School Summit, which was a statewide conference that DOE put on for many years. I'm a big believer in professional associations. I was executive director of ISCA for 10 years and was secondary VP of ASCA. And in my work with ASCA, I chaired their Leadership Development Institute. I also founded the Developmental School Counseling Task Force, and I proposed many years ago the ASCA National Standards at one of our board meetings. So I really like working with associations. I think it's wonderful to network counselor to counselor, and that's been a big part of my past. I founded the nonprofit that we're working with now, and was fortunate enough to receive a couple of awards that I'm proud of and humbled by, the Indiana School Counselor of the Year Award, and then I also received the National High School Counselor of the Year Award. So the program that, in the process that we're teaching to the RSC schools is actually one that I developed in the schools with my colleagues at Indian Creek High School in Trafalgar many years ago, and we made it into a model that we taught other schools, and then when I went to the department we made it a statewide model. So okay, so that's a little bit about me. Here's what we'll be talking about today. I'm going to start with a couple of updates. Then we're going to do a quick review of terminology, beliefs, and process. And we'll do that quick review at the beginning of every month just to kind of put everything into perspective. And then we'll talk specifically about the tasks that you'll do in the next 4 weeks. And that's what we'll do every month when we meet with you in these webinars, is we'll just talk about, okay, what's happening in the next 4 weeks. You'll complete tasks, you'll submit work to us, we'll provide you with feedback within 48 hours, and at the end of the year you'll have a school counseling program portfolio that's ready to submit both for the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award and then also the ASCA RAMP Award. So, okay. So let's start with those updates. Really pleased, we just looked at the number of RAMP recipients in Indiana again. And we have 129, and you can see compared to other states, that's huge. Most states only have 2 or 3 RAMP recipients, so 129 is really significant. Indiana is leading the way in data-driven school counseling programming. You can see Georgia's starting to do some major work to help their schools transform to a data-driven process. North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia is making some big strides. So, so we're really, really proud. Now, One thing I wanted to point out, though, is that one of the things that schools have to do to get the RAMP award is to pay for it. And there's actually a lot of schools that qualify in Indiana for the RAMP award but didn't have the funding to pay for the award. And it's actually you're paying for the plaque, and then there's a really nice awards banquet that ASCA puts on that your payment contributes to. So if we were to include the schools that are RAMP eligible but didn't apply, we have 197 schools in Indiana that are RAMP eligible. That's about 1 in every 10 schools in Indiana, which is huge. So really, really proud. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we're in the middle, our organization right now is in the middle of some conversations with some funders in talking with them about sponsoring your school in the form of paying for your award, your ASCA RAMP award. So I hope to have that all in place so that by the end of the year I'm able to tell you that you don't have to pay for the ASCA RAMP award, that there's an organization that's going to do that on your behalf. So I'll keep you updated as we're having more conversations with the organizations that we are about making that arrangement for you. But pretty much what people are saying is, oh my gosh, if schools are going to do this work and design this wonderful data-driven school counseling program, they shouldn't have to pay for an award. So they're hoping that we can do that on your behalf. So okay, so just wanted to give you that little heads up. Also wanted to make sure that you are aware that we have some significant external research that shows that RSC and Gold Star makes a difference in student achievement. This was some external research that was done by the researchers at the University of Scranton and University of Connecticut. And what they wanted to know was, do sound school counseling programs like the RSC programs impact student achievement? So what they did was they looked at student achievement in 75 RAMP schools in Indiana, which all of the RAMP schools in Indiana went through RSC, so they're all RSC schools. And they compared them to a control group consisting of 226 non-RAMP or non-RSC schools in Indiana. And the benchmark they were looking at was the percentage of students passing the state test or I-STEP and ECA tests in Indiana. They published their findings in the ASCA School Counseling Journal in February of 2013, and here's what they found. Their finding from their research was that Indiana RSC schools evidenced higher achievement at all grade levels in both math and language arts. So I think as you're talking to your principal and your advisory council and your school board or your parents, you can explain to them that you are using this process to design a school counseling program that's going to impact student achievement. And as we go on a little bit, it's really clear to us why RSC impacts achievement, and I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so we do have this online system. I know you've been working on it as you surveyed your students, so we're really pleased with that. And just a little bit of update about our numbers. We now have 640 schools in Indiana that are actively using RSC. We have free subscriptions for every school in the state that our board has provided, and I'm very pleased that they were generous enough to do that. But we're just really pleased that of all of the 2,000 schools in the state, 640 are now using the RSC online system. Nationally, we have schools in 38 states that are using RSC. 213 schools outside of Indiana use RSC to design their school counseling programs. And I'm really pleased, we launched a couple of years ago a new program for graduate students and professors who are teaching pre-service school counselors, so future school counselors. And what they're doing is we're able to provide for every graduate student a mock school in our system that has mock students and mock demographics that match national demographics, as well as student surveys for all those mock students. And what the graduate students are doing is they're using RSC to create a school counseling program that's data-driven as part of their graduate coursework. So that's been wonderful, and my guess is that some of you probably came out of these universities in Indiana that are using RSC, And that's going to be just wonderful because like if you've been at Butler and you've been at using RSC for your mock school, you're able now to just go into your real school and use the same process, same terminology, same everything to create a school counseling program that will be wonderful for your real school. So, okay. Then we wanted to just make sure that you're aware that we have some support for you as you go through this process. There is tech support for you by phone or email that's available 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, from 8 in the morning until 4:30. Excuse me. So the tech support's available from 8 to 4:30, 4 days a week. And then each month you'll be asked to submit submissions, and we will read your submission within 48 hours and provide you with written feedback within 48 hours. And that feedback is going to give you a status for that submission. So it'll either say meets criteria or needs revision, and then it will give you some comments. It'll say good job, or it'll say please revise, we didn't get this quite, the way we think it's going to make you successful, or it's okay this time, but next time please do this. So make sure that you read the comments that come with the revision, with our feedback, because that's going to give you some good points for the following month and for the future. Okay, and that feedback and the support when you call in is coming from Debbie Howell. I think Debbie has communicated with almost all of you, but I'll pause on this slide for a moment, and if you'll write down her name and contact information, anytime you have a question, Debbie's your person. So give her a call, 812-349-4142, or send her an email, howell@asainstitute.org. So Debbie is wonderful. I was tickled with the last webinar that we did this morning that we found a little glitch in the online system in the middle of the webinar, and before the webinar was over, Debbie had contacted our tech people and we had it fixed. So she is just on top of things, and I know she will be a wonderful person to help you. Debbie does not have a background in school counseling. However, she does have a background in academic advising at the post-secondary level, so that's pretty cool. And she's also had some experience with social personal support for folks as part of a program that she worked with. So, but her main expertise, and why I'm so tickled to have her be able to work with you, is she is a downright expert in strategic planning using data. So when you're going through this process and you're thinking, what's a root cause, or how do I get from goals to priority goals, or how does this part of the online system work? Debbie is going to be just fabulous with helping you do that. So you have expertise in school counseling. Debbie has expertise in data-driven strategic planning, and I think that the combination of those two is going to be just wonderful. So Debbie, I know that actually Debbie is on vacation this week, but has wanted to participate in the webinar so that she could chat with you for a minute and hear what we're talking about. So Debbie, you want to jump in and introduce yourself and say a little bit?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Good.
Great. I'm talking with you guys from the hills of Tennessee. I'm sitting on a deck. It's absolutely beautiful here.
We can hear the bird.
Oh, so sorry.
Beautiful.
I just wanted to say that I am really pleased to be here for you all. As Sue pointed out, I've done student services. I've worked with individuals in counseling position. I also have worked as with Ivy Tech as an instructor for student success, and I love this past year's. Previous to that, I did the College Success Coalition, which is very similar to the process you guys are using with Redesigning School Counseling. It's a wonderful last schools that I worked with. I've made some really great connections and found that the counseling departments that were working on it had very wonderful things to say about the process itself and how it was able to help them. So please, as Sue said, use me anytime you have a question. Don't wait. Call me as soon as you need help, because that's what I'm here for. And with that, back to Sue. But I do see that Natalie McGarvey has her hand up.
Okay, great. So Natalie, wonderful. If you want to, let me see here. Oh, there we go. Natalie, I unmuted you on our end, and I think you're unmuted on your end. Question? Okay, well, her hand is now down, so that maybe was just a glitch in the system, who knows. But Natalie, feel free to jump in and also to mute yourself. I see you haven't done that yet. That sounds wonderful. Trying to see real quickly if there's anybody else that's muted on our end that joined late, but no, I don't think. I think we're good there. So Natalie, another option is to type your question in. If for some reason you don't have a mic on your computer or whatever, just type it in. That'll work as well. So okay, one of the things that I think Debbie cut out for a minute. Debbie has worked with RSC for the past year with schools, and then prior to that worked with community organizations that were implementing guidance activities in the community. So she has a lot of experience with us, both in working with student guidance and strategic planning. So okay, here are the schools that we believe that are on our radar as participating in RSC as first-year schools this year. So find your school's name on this list, if you will. If you do not see your school's name on this list, please send Debbie an email real quickly today, maybe tomorrow, and just let her know that you are intending to go through RSC this year, and then we'll get you into our system and onto our radar. So okay, and then on the next slide, these are schools that we will be sending a special email to today with some special instructions. So there's some schools that we just need to have to do a few things to be ready to go through this process. So if your school is on this list, Amy Siegel from our office, she's our director of programming. Amy will be sending you an email with some special instructions for things that you need to do right away. And just kind of a heads up, when you get those instructions, they are very time sensitive. We cannot extend the deadline that's in those instructions at all. So just make it sure that you're seeing what we need you to do, and then just make sure that you're meeting that deadline. Debbie, as I mentioned, is on vacation, so if you have any follow-up to Amy's email this week, Amy, you can just send a return email to Amy, and then next week when Debbie's back, she'll be able to help you. So, okay. Here's our calendar for this year, and I'm going to pause on this slide so you can jot down these dates again. All of our meetings will be at 2:30, and you see in the different columns, the date is on the left, what we're prepping for is in the middle, and then the topic is in the next section. So later you could pull this up on the archive version if you wanted to really look at all these different columns and jot down all the information. But right now I'm just going to read through the dates so you can jot them down and then get them on your calendar. So the first one's today, August 2nd. Then August 30th, that's right at the end of the month. We're actually going to be prepping for the September meeting in that second meeting in August, August 30th. October 4th, October 27th, and that will also, even though that meeting's in October, we'll be prepping for the November meeting. December 6th, there's no webinar in January. February 7th, March 7th, April 11th, May 2nd, and then all of your work needs to be completed by June 15th. And if there's anything that we've asked you to revise or to change, everything has to be sent into us and approved by June 15th. Then the awards, as soon as you're approved, you'll get an email in June that says everything that's been approved. And then you'll actually receive your award from ISCA. The president of the Principals Association will present that to you, and that will happen at the 2017 ISCA conference. So, okay, so those are all the dates. And then one other thing that we just want to draw to your attention is that it is possible to earn up to 90 PGPs. So for those of you who are renewing your license in Indiana and you need PGPs, in the logistics section of the manual, you can download the Indiana PGP log and then just start logging your time, and then that will be sent to us by June 15th, and then we'll give you your certificate for the PGPs. Okay, so let me pause. Any questions? Debbie, any questions are typed in, or anybody want to jump in here?
I don't see anything up right now.
Okay, okay. And not hearing any questions, so we'll go right on. Quick review. First of all, let's just kind of review the terminology. Remember that we use two terms, guidance and counseling. Guidance activities are activities that enable all students, with a big emphasis on the word all there. So guidance activities enable all students to master guidance standards, and as a result of mastering those guidance standards, they make sound choices in areas that impact high achievement. So guidance is all about helping kids master standards. You may be aware that Indiana just updated the guidance standards, and we've aligned with those standards, as well as ASCA just updated their national standards, and we aligned with their national standards as well. So when you're working with RSC, at the end of this work, your activities will be aligned with both the Indiana and the ASCA standards. Okay, counseling activities are not for all students. If your school is typical, about 20% of your students are coming to school every day with a personal or social concern that's interfering with their ability to learn. So in the counseling activities, we're helping students address those personal social concerns that are interfering with learning. And again, counseling is not for all students, but all students do need to master those guidance standards, so guidance is for all students. Then two other types of activities, advocacy activities. Those are activities that counselors do when we're sticking up for kids, when we're standing up for kids. Sometimes we're standing up for systemic change that will develop an environment that supports learning for all students. For example, if your low-income kids aren't taking AP classes because they can't pay for the AP assessment, that may be something that you stand up for, and you become a voice for low-income kids in AP courses. So that would be advocacy. Or advocacy can be when you're standing up for one kid. So if you're at a special ed case conference and you're there not as the administrator of the conference, but as a student advocate representing that student, and the needs of that student, then that would be an advocacy activity. Or if you're talking to, standing up for a student, any individual student, that would be advocacy. Management activities are the activities that usually happen behind the scenes, not when you're face-to-face with kids or parents, but they're activities that help the school counseling program run smoothly and efficiently. So here are some examples of management activities. It might be program development, so everything that you're doing with RSC is a management activity. It might be personal development when you're participating in these webinars, going to conferences, taking a graduate course, doing professional reading. That's all management. Networking with other departments in your school, with your school improvement team, with parents, and then evaluating your school counseling program. Those are all management activities that help your school counseling program run well. Okay, and then that last kind of activity are activities that we call non-program activities. Those are activities that do not help students master a guidance standard or address a personal social problem that's interfering with learning. So they really have nothing to do with school counseling. Here are types of common non-program activities. So administrative tasks, record keeping or registrar tasks, master scheduling, and then other odds and ends like managing and coordinating graduation or being responsible for discipline, or in my case, I was responsible for book rental for a while. So, these are all good activities that have to happen in a school. But we just want folks to understand that when school counselors are doing these activities, they're not involved in school counseling. So if a counselor were to spend 50% of their time doing these activities, the school does not really have a full-time school counselor. The school has a half-time school counselor. And we'll get into that. We asked you last spring to start working and completing time task logs. And this is why, because we want to figure out how much time you're spending on these different types of activities so that we can look at later, is that the correct amount of time, the right amount of time, the desirable amount of time for your program. And then if not, we'll work at changing that. Okay, so our RSC beliefs. Again, we believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. This is how school counseling impacts achievement. This is why that research study by the universities of Scranton and UConn showed that schools that implement RSC programs have higher achievement. It's because RSC school counseling programs are helping kids make targeted choices in areas that we know impact achievement, like coming to school, like being assertive rather than aggressive, like doing a campus visit, like taking a learning styles assessment and applying learning styles to learning. So it's all those choices that kids do, that kids make, that impact their success at school. So school counseling programs help kids make those good choices. So this is a schematic that we like to use for folks that like models. And this is something that we always want to share with you because we think that this might be good for you to share also with your principal or your school board or your superintendent or parents. So basically we're saying that when students are involved in well-designed guidance and counseling programs, that they tend to make better choices, and because they're making better choices in areas that impact achievement, then achievement goes up. So it's kind of a no-brainer that achievement goes up when schools are designing their school counseling programs this way. Now, this year, and this is something I really want to make sure everyone's understanding, when you are designing your RSC school counseling program this year, we're just going to take this pyramid and we're going to work it backwards. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what are your school's achievement goals. So we're going to get out your school improvement plan, and you'll find the achievement goals that are in your school improvement plan, and then you're going to say, okay, it's our school counseling program's desire to impact those school improvement goals. So then we're going to say, what choices do kids need to make in order for our school to reach its achievement goals? For example, if you're in a high school and one of your achievement goals is to increase success in AP courses, one of the choices that you might impact is the percentage of students who enroll in AP, or the percentage of students who participate in extra help for AP. So same thing. If your school's working on students who are currently in the bottom 25% of your elementary school, what choices do those kids need to make in order to be better learners in your school? So once we know what the choices are, then we'll say, okay, what guidance activities do we need to put in place to help kids make those choices? And what counseling activities do we need to put in place to address the personal or social issues that are interfering with those choices? So that's how RSC works, and it's why we get the results that we do, is that we start out with achievement and then figure out what we need to do to get kids to the place where they can achieve. Okay, pause here for questions again. Debbie, I'm going to check in with you. This is review, so if there's no questions, that would not be surprising.
No questions popping up.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Debbie. Okay, so the process then is, what we're doing right now is we're getting ready, and some of this you've already done. So you've got your steering team together, you've surveyed students, you've completed your self-studies, you did that all in the spring and the summer, and today we're ready for that fourth part, which is to put together the advisory council. So we'll talk about that today. So that's it for today, is we're working on advisory council. And this month you'll convene, you'll organize your advisory council, get everybody to agree to participate. Then next month you'll meet with your council for your first meeting. You'll do an introduction. The meeting after that, you'll talk about your vision. What are our dreams for kids? The meeting after that, you'll talk about, okay, to get to those dreams, what student choices do kids need to make? And your whole council will start to say things like, kids need to do their homework, kids need to come to school, kids need to ask questions when they're confused, kids need to talk to their parents about their post-secondary plans. All of those things that successful students tend to do will come up as part of this discussion. So that discussion will happen in November. Then in December, we'll say, okay, there's all these choices we want kids to make, but you know what? There's only, one of us for every 400 kids or whatever your ratio is. And we only spend 10% of our time with kids and parents because we're doing all kinds of non-program activities. How can we expand our resources, especially time? So that's step 4A. And after the council has talked about, okay, here's how we can get more time for our counselors, or here's how we can get more money for our counselors, or whatever it is that you need. Then we'll take that big list of student choices and we'll narrow it down to 2 or 3 priority goals, 2 or 3 choices that your program is going to nail so that every single student in the building makes that choice in the coming year. So it might be every student is turning in more homework, or every student is taking an SAT, or every student is submitting a FAFSA, or every student has done a career field trip, or whatever it is. We want, every student in the building is going to make that choice. So that's going to happen in December. Actually, it can carry over into January if you want. Then in February, we'll start to explain why kids aren't making those choices right now. And it's going to be probably, I would say 100% of the time it's one of 3 things. Either they don't have the knowledge or the skill that they need to make that choice, and if that's the case, it's a guidance initiative that we need to be teaching them that skill or that knowledge, or they have a personal or social issue that's interfering with their ability to make that choice, and if that's the case, then it's a counseling program issue, or we just aren't giving them the opportunity. The kids want to take a career interest inventory, but we don't give them the chance to do that. It's not part of our programming. So in this step, we're going to look at a whole bunch of data that will help us determine what it is that are keeping kids from making the choices that we want them to make at school. So, okay, so once we know what the root causes are, like we don't give kids the opportunity to take a career interest inventory, then in March we'll start to look at, okay, what activities do we need to put in place? My guess is that 90% of what you need you probably already have in your school counseling program. So for most of you, it's not going to be a lot of major change. It's going to be a little bit of minor tweaking. You might say, we've got everything we need except for career interest inventory, so let's add that. And for some of you, you'll have activities that you'll think, why are we doing that? That doesn't align with any of the choices that we want kids to make. We've just done that because it's always been done. It doesn't really relate to any of our goals. So for some of you, you'll get rid of activities as well as maybe add on some new activities. But for almost all of you, most of what you're doing is what you need to be doing already. So this will just give you some validation that you're on the right track and then help you tweak a little bit. For some of you, though, it will be kind of an eye-opener. I know when I first did this, our counselors in my school were spending 90% of our time and doing things that had nothing to do with counseling. And when we got to this step, we were like having to look at a lot of changes. So just depends on where you are right now. So that'll happen in March. And then that's the last meeting with your advisory council in March. And then after that, we'll just get ready to implement your program. So you write some lesson plans, we'll come up with a master calendar, we'll create a budget for your program. So it's just the getting ready part. Okay, so that's the overview. Pause one more time. Debbie, I'm not seeing any questions. Are you seeing questions?
Nope, I think all is good.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now that's the review. Let's talk about this month's tasks. This month, the only thing we're doing is we are recruiting your advisory council members. We're not going to meet with them this month. We're just recruiting them. So let's talk about this. So first question is, why even convene an advisory council? Well, first of all, the advisory council, the way we set it up, it mirrors the community in terms of race, ethnicity, economic level, gender, geographic location. In my own school counseling experience, my first several years as a school counselor, I did not uh, ask for anybody else's input. I didn't have an advisory council. It was just me. And so every decision about the programming for our school was based on the perceptions of a middle-class white female. When I started putting together an advisory council and asking, parents of a dropout, what would have helped your child in our school, or asking our low-income parents, or making sure that I was talking to our economic development folks, and just all the different folks in your community who care about guiding kids. When I started asking lots of questions, our program became so much richer and more focused in a way that was meaningful to the kids. So the people on your advisory council, and this I'd really like you to think about ahead of time. They'll be able to help you in several ways. One, in terms of allocating resources. Your principal, for example, or your assistant principal really has the ability to allocate time. So getting them involved and having them understand what you're trying to do is like amazingly helpful. Also, some of your community organizations, your community foundation, if you get to a point where you need funding for part of your initiative, they're able to provide funding. Some of your advisory council members will be able to provide access to kids. Teachers, of course, but think about it. If you could do a program, a guidance program at school, and then it was followed up in all of the Boys Clubs activities or Boy Scouts to have a career merit badge, if they could, if you could coordinate with them, if you could do a guidance activity and then you send something home to the parents that they could follow up your activity and coordinate with your activity and discussions that they're having at the dinner table. And there's just all kinds of ways to have access to kids besides going into classrooms or bringing kids into your office. So that's another reason to bring people to the table. The people that you bring to the table will also have a lot of access to knowledge that you don't have. For me personally, it opened just my eyes incredibly when I started talking with folks from the business community and our economic development council folks, just to understand about the amount of academic rigor that kids were going to need to be successful in the workforce. And that was huge for me. And then later, your community organizations can also provide guidance lessons. My own advisory council, we started having things happen like the Chamber of Commerce said, we see one of your guidance standards is about interviewing skills. Why don't we come into your school and interview every kid in a mock interview? Bingo, that was wonderful. Or our economic development, or our econ teacher, he said, and econ was a required course, he said, we teach this thing called opportunity costs. Instead of using the book story problem, I could apply that concept to making a post-secondary education decision. And, we would teach about all the different types of post-secondary ed in my econ class to all of my seniors first semester. Bingo. So your advisory council become your teammates. They become your information sources. They provide resources. It's just really a rich thing. The schools we have seen that have had the biggest success with RSC have spent the most time really getting a good advisory council. So something we want you to remember is that the advisory council are not worker bees, they're thinker bees. So they're going to come to your meetings, you're going to throw out some questions, discussion prompts, and they're going to think and they're going to give you ideas. Then they're going to go home. And then that's it until the next meeting. The worker bee is you in your steering team, as we've talked about in the past. The advisory council are your thinker bees. So, okay. So advisory council makeup. We're suggesting most of our advisory councils that are really impactful have 20 to 30 members. We're going to give you lots of resources so that you are able to have discussions with 20 to 30 people, and we'll do all the background work, or as one school said, oh, you're doing all the grunt work, and then we just take it and we have the discussions. Yeah, that's basically it. So in your council of 20 to 30 people, we would like there to be teachers at all grade levels and all subjects. So you've got a lot of teachers on your council. Students at all grade levels, and also thinking about programming, what programs your kids are on your council are involved in. Do you have high ability students? Do you have general ed students, special ed? Do you have college prep students? Do you have career and tech ed students? So, we want all different kinds of students to be represented. Counselors, administrators, people from your feeder school, that will help you coordinate and build upon the school counseling program at the school that feeds into your school, and including preschools for elementaries. That's always nice too. And then also people on the receiving school. So if you're an elementary school, then you'd want somebody from the middle school to be there so you can coordinate and have a vertical articulation in your guidance curriculum between your school and the next school. Then from the community, parents of all grade levels, parents of all programs. I mentioned before we had a parent of a dropout. That was so good to get that feedback. Economic development is there written in red. That is key, I think. If you were only going to have one person's advice, I'd want it to be somebody from your Economic Development Council. They are really thinking about what they need their employees to be like 10 years from now, while you're thinking about how to prepare students to succeed in life 10 years from now. So it's a really good discussion between school counselors and economic development folks, we believe. Business, your community foundation, your media, when they understand what you're doing, you'll get great press, which is wonderful. Youth service organizations, faith-based organizations. If you think about it, outside of school, probably the one place that reaches the most kids is the faith-based organizations in your community. Service clubs, we did a review of the mission statements of the major service clubs in Indiana, like Kiwanis and Lions Club, Rotary. 80% of them have the word student in their mission statement or youth in their mission statement. So they want to serve kids and are happy to work with you. Your public library, who can provide resources, public resources to support the same kind of learning that you're trying to support. Different agencies, your local mental health agency, and then local government. So you can see that there's lots of different stakeholders. We're really thinking about who's interested in guiding kids in your community, who's interested in how kids turn out in your community. That's who we want at the table. So economic development, I talked a little bit about them and how important they are. There's every county has an economic development council, and then if you're in a larger city, your city may have an economic development council as well. Business representatives, and when you talk to business representatives, we would encourage you to recruit somebody from human resources. And someone from a larger business that's maybe thinking about, okay, where are human resources coming from 10 years from now? Business loves to be involved because while they have lots of opportunities to impact material resources and the quality of their material resources, they have very little opportunities to impact the quality of their human resources. So they love being at the table with educators to talk about that. I think they'll jump on it. In the beginning of RSC, we had a lot of folks that would ask like a bank teller to be their business representative. And not that there's anything wrong with bank tellers, but they're really not focused on where our human resources going to be 10 years from now. So I'd suggest you pick up the phone, call the biggest company in your district, or even outside of your district, and just tell them what you're doing and ask if they could identify somebody in human resources that would come to the table and talk to you. If you're in a little rural community, like my school was a little rural community, I don't even think we had a gas station. We had a Dairy Queen. But we didn't have any business in our district. So what we did is we looked at where do our seniors go to work. And even though we were in little tiny Trafalgar, our graduates went to Columbus, to Cummins Engine, and they went to Franklin to Arvin. And so we talked with Cummins and Arvin and asked them, would you like to come to the table since you hire our graduates to talk about what they're like? And both said yes. So your community foundations have funding. Community foundations love working with RSC because while you have boots on the ground and can make these things happen, Community foundation folks tend to have funding, but not boots on the ground. So it's a great partnership with you coordinating programs and them funding programs. It's a great match. Service clubs, we mentioned about how they're interested in youth. And then a question that we often get, if there's more than one school in your district that's going through RSC, do you each need to have a council? And the answer is yes. And that's because the students are different in every school and the politics are different in every school. So it's really helpful for each school to have its own council. Now, there are times when you can all meet together for a presentation and then separate for discussions. So you can work together, your different councils in one district can work together for a presentation, but then when it comes time to looking at data or having a discussion about your dreams or your vision for kids, then we would separate and have that discussion separately. Okay, so what does the Advisory Council do? They attend 6 meetings. Those are the months, and they just come to the meeting. There's no homework in between meetings. They just provide input on what's coming up, and they provide feedback on what just happened. So remember, they're the thinker bees. But you'll also find that as they get to know you and as they're learning about your programming and learning about all the needs that kids have, they are going to become your biggest advocates. They will become cheerleaders for your school. I think I may have mentioned before that in my own school, our school board was talking about riffing one of our counselors, and it was our advisory council, that stood up and said, you're not riffing this person, you're riffing a part of a program, and the school board decided not to do that riff. So they become your advocates. And then down the road, it's wonderful when the light bulb goes off and they think about, oh, we could be helping here. We could come into the school and do mock interviews. We could coordinate campus visits. We could learn about PSAT and do a PSAT interp with every kid individually. So it's just a great way to get people to help you deliver your program. So okay, so I'm going to stop here again. Jump in if you have questions. Not hearing Debbie. I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm assuming we're okay.
Nope, we have 2 questions.
Okay, go ahead. Good.
One was, is it too late if we haven't done anything so far? And the other one would be, is it acceptable if we are unable to reach 20 to 30 individuals for our advisory council?
Good questions. If you haven't done anything so far, you're one of the schools who's probably on that list that we're about to send special instructions to. So, so it's not too late, but we're really going to have to jump to action quickly. So the email that you get later today from Amy Siegel will explain that. So no, it's not too late, but we really need to jump on it now. And I think for all of you, you'll start to see, if you start to get behind, the work just piles up. It's okay if you get like 1 month behind. It's okay right now if you haven't done anything, but we really need to jump on it right now. If you get 2 months behind, we find at that point it's hard to catch up. And it's not impossible, but it's difficult. So the answer is no, it's not too late. But read that email, and what I would suggest, Debbie will be back from vacation on Monday. I'd call Debbie and schedule maybe an hour to have a discussion with her and just kind of go through everything with her to make sure that you know what to do to get caught up. When we get to the online system in a minute, I'll show you some hints on that one too. And then if you can't get 20 or 30 people, first of all, I'd be really surprised. Keep in mind that in my school they had just a Dairy Queen in our district. We found 20 or 30 people. So what I would do if that seems like a struggle for you is I'd give Debbie a call and just ask her if she'd do a brainstorm with you about who you might recruit for your advisory council. If you have 4 grade levels in your school, there's 4 parents. So we're going to give you a lot of tools for that recruitment, which I'll show you in a sec. But we've never had schools not not be able to get 20 or 30. So, you know, I suppose there's always a first, but let's talk about that. So, okay. So this month's submissions. You're going to be submitting an advisory council roster, and here's the rubric items. We want to make sure the advisory council roster includes representatives of those different groups, and that that you've entered into our system the participants' names, phone numbers, email addresses, and their perspective. So the perspective, let's talk about that for a moment. We're asking you to tell us that Jane Doe was invited, why Jane Doe was invited to be on your council. And it may be that you invited Jane Doe because she is a low-income parent of a free and reduced lunch student, and you wanted to have that voice at the table. So on this report, though, we don't want that to print on the report, but we do want there to be a perspective on the report. So what we're going to do is at the first advisory council meeting, we'll talk about this in September, we'll ask each person, who do you represent? So you may know that Jane Doe is on your council because she's a low-income parent, but Jane Doe may say, I can represent third-grade parents because I'm a third-grade parent. And so we want each person to know that they're on your council because they're there as a representative and not as an individual. That way it makes it harder for them to not show up the next meeting, because then they know that the third-grade parents aren't representative. They don't show up. So that's really important. So when you enter people's perspectives, you'll be entering the perspective that they came up with, rather than the perspective that you invited them to be on your council for. So, okay, just wanted to mention that. So you'll submit that, and then there are some narrative questions that you'll turn in this month, and we'll make sure that you've given an answer to each of those questions. And then your time task log, that's coming up, and you're working on that right now. Okay, so let's look at the manual. I'm going to go through this with slides so I can show you what these documents look like after they're opened up. So when we get online, in just a second, I know that I'm probably going to go over about 4 minutes worth. So I know we're just looking at my watch. I know we're getting close to 3:30. So not to panic, we're not going to go over by much. When we open the system, you'll be able to see that the manual is showing you these things. So here you've got a document that's going to help you brainstorm advisory council members. You've got a document that's going to give you some suggestions about what to say when you call people. Then you've got a sample intro letter and a sample follow-up letter. So let me show you what those look like. Here is the council member brainstorm. So there's all these lists. So you can see, I mean, there's just a gazillion people, different stakeholder groups in your school. Do you have students representing different grade? Do you have different grade levels in your school? Yes, so you circle that. Do you have different ethnic groups in your school? Yes, so you circle that. Do you have free and reduced lunch students in your school? Can't imagine the answer is no, but let's say it's no, so you didn't circle that one. Do you have special ed kids? Yes, so you circle that. So you've got all these different stakeholder groups among the students. You've got all the kinds of stakeholder groups among the parents. And then same thing in your community. There's a second page to this that lists all the community stakeholder groups. So you're going to start out by circling the stakeholder groups that are in your community, and then you're going to come up with a name. Who could we invite to be a representative of that person? So let's say that you don't know any third grade parents. What you could do is contact the PTA and ask them if they could recommend a third grade parent. Let's say you don't know anybody in business. What you could do is call a large business in your community and ask them to recommend somebody. So you don't have to know everybody personally that you're inviting. You can, when you call those people, you can say, you know, George Smith suggested that you might be a good person to fill this position on our advisory council, and then explain it to them. Okay, here's the talking points. And again, you don't, you know, this may fit your style, it may not. We just wanted to give you something to start with. So our school is beginning a process to redesign our school counseling program. We are trying to better meet the academic and personal social development needs, career and personal social development needs of our students. So you're just kind of going through these talking points. And again, you may come up with some different talking points. We're just always trying to to save you some time by giving you some suggestions. Okay, and then after someone says yes, which normally what we hear from folks is it's not hard to get people to say yes. So then you're sending them a follow-up letter to just make that commitment formal on their part. And you're saying, okay, thank you, and here's dates for our meetings, and you're going to put all those dates in. So and then yeah, and so that's it. The other thing, and we'll talk about this in September before your first meeting, but we'll suggest that you call all of your advisory council members the day before the meeting. If you have multiple steering team members, that can be one person's responsibility, and just remind them of the meeting and how important it is that their voice is there, because you need to have the third grade parents represented or whatever. So okay, I'm gonna pause for questions again. Any more questions, Debbie?
Nope, I see no new questions.
Okay, so let's really look at the online system, and then that will be it. So this is going to be very quick. And okay, couple of things with the online system, and we said this last spring, but I'm going to review this very quickly. Remember, really the only 3 tabs you need are the top 3. And if you haven't done it already, which I'm assuming all of you have, you would click on RSC uses and make sure that first year process is checked, and save that, and then go down and tell us how you're what kind of recognition you're working towards. This customizes your website. It's very, very important. So if you haven't done this, as soon as we finish this webinar, please go in and make sure that that first year process is checked. Okay, in the manual, when I look at the manual tab, if I scroll down, here's Advisory Council Recruitment. Here's the things that we just talked about. They're all linked, and you can just open up them and download and print them. And then in the Process tab, you have been working on this all spring and summer, and I'm going to scroll down to our August tasks. So hopefully everything's checked off above there. And for those of you who said, is it too late to get started? No, it's not. But what you would do, and Debbie can walk you through this, is just start out at the top here and just work your way through this with getting organized, putting your steering team together, collecting your data, and then doing some self-studies. And when you get the email today about with the special instructions, it's going to talk to you about getting caught up with some of this. Okay. Then, so building your advisory council. So the webcast that we are recording right now is going to be linked right here. So you watch the webcast if you want to again. You can actually check that one off because you've watched it, you participated in it. Then enter advisory council roster. I'm going to click the enter, and I'm going to add an advisory council member. So I'm going to click enter. And you can see I've got some members in here already, but I'll scroll down and I want to add a new person, and I'm going to put in the person's name, last name, email, phone, and their perspective. But right now you're going to leave that perspective blank because we want the perspective that they tell us that they feel like they're there to give. So leave perspective blank for right now. Just fill in name, email, and phone. Okay. Now, let's say I'm lost in the system. I don't know where I am. I don't know how to get back to where I want to go. Remember, anytime you're lost, just click on the Process tab. That takes you back to the Process page, and then you can scroll down to where you were working. Okay, Advisory Council roster. The report, when you print it out, looks like this, and you can see, that the perspectives are listed there, as well as the people's names and their phones and email addresses. One other thing on the Enter Advisory Council roster that I wanted to point out is that once you get those 20, 30 people in, let's say that you want to email them, I'll send them all an email. We've created a tool here that just creates an email list with commas in between them. If you're using Microsoft Outlook, you need semicolons in between them, so just click that, and that changes the commas to semicolons. Then you can just copy this and put it into a 2-box. Right now I only have, 6 or 7 advisory councils entered into our demo school. But, you know, if you have 20 or 30 people, this is going to save you a lot of time from having to find all those email addresses. Okay, then, so that's the advisory council roster. Here's the rubric. And you are, you know, this is what we went over before. And then that's it. And then the very last thing is to send an email to Debbie. Here's instructions for how to do that. And then, you know, check these things off as you've done them, and then save your checks. So right now, your one and only task for this month is to meet with your steering team, discuss, you know, I would go through that brainstorm, that advisory council brainstorm list, discuss who you're going to invite to be on your advisory council, call them up, get their commitments, send them the follow-up email, and you're good to go. And then next, at the end of the month, when we are prepping for your September meeting, we'll talk about and walk through step by step how to conduct that meeting with your advisory council for the first time. So, okay, that is it. Let me just see if we have any questions before we close. I'll wait for a couple seconds here to see if anything comes up.
I don't see any.
Okay, let's just wait for any other questions. Okay, I'm going to count to 5 in my head, and then we're going to close. Okay, that sounds great. So thank you for participating in this. Thank you for going the extra mile to design a data-driven school counseling program. I know that you're probably not going to get a raise for doing this, or a corner office, or a new, you know, title, or anything like that. You're doing this work because you love kids, and you're realizing that a data-driven school counseling program that's focused on student choices related to academic achievement is going to be helpful to your students. So you may never even get a thank you from your principal or your school board, but we know, Debbie and I know, and our whole organization knows the work that you're putting into this. And so on behalf of your students in the state of Indiana, thank you so much for doing this. So, okay, remember that you make a difference in the lives of young people. So very good. Have a great start of school, and we'll talk to you in about 4 weeks. So very good. See you, everyone.